And hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages. It is the F4L icon himself, Sean Jazz Stevens, welcoming you back to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, you're too kind. Too kind, really. Anyway, folks, this past week we had the return of the icons of the F4L to YouTube right here, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it thus far. It's been a short result so far. Slow burn, if you would, kind of giving you guys a little taste of the landscape that's going to be here in 2023. We got to meet some new stars and some new teams and so forth. And we got to see the returning icons that we all have come to love over the years. So those people who don't know, first and foremost, I hope you guys appreciated my April Fool's prank the other day. Thank you. It was pretty funny. So over the weekend, we actually debuted a little bit earlier than expected, as we have been telling people we're returning on April 4th, 2023, and since April Fool's Day was upon us, and I love this month for the prankingness that it is, I decided why not surprise the world with debuting a little early. So those people who watched thus far, you probably are aware that, the first couple shows we've had to use some of their arenas because the new software is giving some difficulties, but I am very happy to announce that we have begun remodeling some of our own. So we've fixed this, and hopefully our next full show will have our updated arenas, and including the Jazz and Sons 2023 Hall of Fame class arena. Those people who don't know, Fire and Ice, along with the Social Outcast and the unpredictable Brock Brown, all inducted this year, as well as St. Peggy Hannon inducted into the women's wing, into the Jazz and Sons Hall of Fame this year. So we have an arena being built now that that's been resolved somewhat. It's a work in progress, so be patient as the arenas start to come. I can tell you that we're going to be having the all-new Monster Mania Arena, as well as two new arenas, the Brutalities Arena, thanks to our friends at Brutalities, the tea brand, as well as a Deadly Grounds coffee arena, because why not? I think it fits in really well with us, and for the most part, it fits in really well with the aura of the show, so I hope you guys are enjoying those. So let's talk about some results that you guys may or may not have witnessed or seen. We've had titles change hands. First and foremost, how about number 13, Yesenia Verkovitz, winning an off-air tournament to challenge Speedy Easton McDonald to take the Dream Masters Universal Championship. It's so far the biggest championship the young man from Moscow, Russia, has won. And congratulations to him. It's only a start of what's coming down the line. And currently we're in the process of finding out the number one contender for him. In addition to that, also, we saw the tag team titles change hands twice since the return. The new tag team of Pod Meets World, which is, of course, the cast of Boy Meets World, all grown up. They have their own podcast, and they made their debuts on April Fool's Day as they challenged Jack and Tim, the Lucky Ones, for the Dream Masters Universal Tag Team Championship, and surprised the champions by winning. Of course, that being Ryder Strong and the Voice, Will Friedle. Of course, in their corner was the incomparable and very helpful Danielle Fishel, who surely must have been their secret weapon as they were able to topple the champions. Of course, then we had the rematch on the 4th, to which Pod Meets World won. The Jack and Tim, the Lucky Ones, showed that their dominance and showed their veteran status by winning and getting the titles back. Those people who saw earlier today, you know that we finally now have a decisive tag team champion, and we're going to be in the process of finding new challengers, as the new undisputed tag team universal champions, of course, is Pod Meets World, shocking the veterans. And of course, Jack and Tim, the lucky ones, love to have the challenge, and they love to work their ways back up. And we have I can tell you that we have a very hungry and healthy tag team division. So we look forward to seeing who's going to step up to the plate and who's going to be challenging. Speaking of tag teams, we saw the payoff between Jaden Brooks and the Battacles. The Battacles of TikTok, of course, just before we went on break, had an issue with Jaden Brooks, the American boxer, former tag team champion, and United States champion, Jaden Brooks. He ended up getting the win, and the Battacles attacked Jaden after their match back on the last show, and then over the weekend, with the return of the show, we saw Jaden with his surprise partner, and of course, who better to have than his very own younger brother, Lincoln Brooks, or as we call him, Big Man Lincoln Brooks. He made his successful debut, and how about this, led the team to victory as they toppled the foes of TikTok, the Battacles. And of course, now they're in the hunt for the tag team titles. Lincoln actually had a match just recently today, had a big fight with Jake Paul, of all people. I can't wait to see what that's going to pay out to be. We have to wait and find out, I suppose. And of course, also a new title changed hands, as we have a new Dream Masters MMA Tag Team Champions, BA MMA Tag Team Champions, I should say, as of today. We had a tournament that we shared some of. We didn't share the whole thing. To decide the number one contenders for Henry and Jairo Mena, the Mena boys. They did successfully defend over the weekend when we debuted, as they toppled, I think it was the Insane Clown Posse, or actually it was the Hagen boys, I believe, they beat. And then today they put out an open challenge, and we had a tournament of 8 of the top star tag teams, including some surprises. And in the end, the Legends stepped up to the plate and challenged the Mena boys. And it was a war, and it was a great match. And I look forward to seeing the rematch that'll be coming up on April 14th. So that should be exciting, which is when our next Dream Master show will be. Excuse me, folks, as I grab my water. It is a fun time, yeah, let me tell you. So, in addition to that, we saw the championship's been defended twice, several times, and of course, the number one, the Nightmare, Noah Tyndall, has been successfully able to retain his championship all weekend. He had a great match with King of Tekken on April Fool's Day, and then he went on to have several matches since then. I can tell you that he is going to have a match with his number one contender, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the next person to step up to the plate, on April 14th. So Noah Tyndall will be defending the Dream Masters BA MMA Championship against Jean-Claude Van Damme for the first time ever. It would be interesting. In addition to that, we're going to be doing a tag team 4-way to decide the number one contenders for the Dream Masters Universal Tag Team Championship, and numerous other things. Of course, we also saw the war between the Awesome Ones, Sean Awesome, and of course his opponent group, the Smooth Operators, run by KD Smooth. As the cousins went to war games, it was quite interesting. And in the end, it was the Smooth Operators who walked away from the war games. In addition to that, we saw the debut of the author and the great Richard M. Bourne making his in-ring debut in a War Games against a bunch of clowns, as he and some other former people associated with Hellman Elementary teamed up with him. Of course, that would being the Total Package, Walker Campbell and the prodigy Jackson R. Scott, as well as yours truly, teamed up with Richard M. Bourne to take on a bunch of clowns in the form of Art the Clown and Doink the Clown and, of course, the Insane Clown Posse. And Richard Bourne was not happy, but in the end, sometimes fear causes us to fight even harder and to battle over those fears. And I think Richard did a great job conquering those fears, considering he picked up the big victory in the end. So, yeah, I'd say we're pretty off to a good start so far. A lot of debuts, a lot of returns. A lot of people haven't been seen yet, but it's early yet. And, of course, remember, on the 9th, the women's turn will be up as we announced that the women are going to get their own time to shine on the 9th and the 16th of the month. And the men, of course, will be on the 4th, 14th, and 24th of each month. And then probably the 24th is going to be more of a collection show, which will be a kind of a commemoration of all of both the Dream Masters and the Dream Warriors, which is our women's division, for the payoffs. So basically it's 2 shows each, and then the main show for the last show of the month will be for everybody on the 24th. So that should be pretty epic. So that is kind of what's going on with Dream Masters and the icons of the F4L. A lot of big things have happened thus far. We do know that all the women still have their own championships, and just so people know, people did come in as champions, as we did when they left. So just up to them if they keep them or not going forward. And we have a bunch more people on both rosters, so it should be very exciting. The other cool thing is, I wanted to address something that people asked me about my wrestling career and the background that I have in pro wrestling. And people asked me, what is it like to be a good guy versus a bad guy in pro wrestling, and what is it about, and why did people think that Jazz Fitness was so popular versus Jazz Vengeance, the good guy? Well, Jazz Fitness was the heel, the bad guy, and he was a kind of a parody character, where he was, the unfit fitness guru, where Jazz Vengeance was the voice of the people. And that was me early on, and I was very much fit to mold for that character back then. Jazz Fitness is a character who is very loud, obnoxious, opinionated, egocentric, and a lot of people who know me know that to be the complete opposite of who I am, and probably know that I don't believe in half of the things that Jazz Fitness does. But in the end, I really have to say that it was actually kind of fun to explore the heel side of things, to see if I could actually turn the crowd to hate me. Because that's the ultimate idea. See, whenever you go out to a ring, it's up to you to get yourself over, good or bad. The worst thing you can do is hear crickets when you go out there and no one cares about you at all. But to go out and actually have control of the crowd with using your words, your actions, is actually quite an art. By going out, for a face, for example, a good person, you go out there and high five everyone, smiles and hug people, and be nice to the fans. And you talk very nice things about the fans of the town you're in, and sometimes we call that cheap heat. Of course, being a heel is the opposite of that. So going out to a crowd as the heel, you would oftentimes disregard the fans for their attempts for high fives. You would not shake their hands or high five them because you're a bad person. Why would you shake their hand? Why would they want to? So you would often go out there and refrain from high fiving or shaking hands with people or being nice to the fans. And then when it comes to mic work or talking in front of the crowd, where if you're a good person, you're saying nice things to the fans and Heels, it's really the opposite of that. Just saying nasty things and picking on the crowd. And an easy way to do that is pick a few people in the crowd and highlight those people and really make them feel like they're 2 inches tall. And then you can get a major heel over that. And I have often found that usually picking on, someone who you view people to like is probably the best way to do it. For example, if you want to get mega heat, you pick on either a woman or a kid because, that would automatically make people not like you. You're a bully and you're a punk and you're talking smack about all these people. Now, what Jazz Fitness was about was he was all about the supposed fitness world, even though he the character was very unfit, as he was portrayed. Being able to do his jazzy jacks and jazz ups to not doing proper calisthenics and taking the easy way out. That's kind of his character, and that's what he was about. And he was about being, everything revolved around him. And that's kind of the character of Jazz Fitness. So in answer to that question, in the long round, is it easier to be a heel or a face, or which is more fun? And for me, it's a challenge to do both. But at the end of the day, the idea is you want to get yourself over, regardless if you're a good or a bad person. I think the problem is today people go out there and you don't know who's good or bad. And then the crowd doesn't know how to react, and the crowd can't react because the person either can't talk on the microphone or they can't make a connection with the audience. And that's ultimately what it's about, is connecting to the audience. Getting that heat, whether it's face heat or heel heat. And that's ultimately kind of what you're looking for when you go to the crowd, kind of like if you're doing a live performance. You gauge your audience. And that's kind of the fun part, is figuring out your audience and how to, get yourself over, whether you're a good or a bad person. Some memories of being a heel, for example, I was in a not so nice area that I knew that the area that we were in was kind of an area that's known to kind of be kind of down and out kind of an area, kind of a rough neck of the woods, so to speak. It was in the middle of we had this show that I was doing in a nightclub type of thing. So we were allowed to be a little bit more hardcore than we normally would on the microphone. And the promoter told me when I was Jazz Fitness to go out there and, make sure people hated me. I said, well, just make sure the security team's ready. Because this was in the middle of a dive bar, this show that we were doing. And he wanted me to get the crowd annoyed and fire them up at the start with a fitness center, which was my talk show segment. So I went out there and told the fans that the concession stand would not accept their food stamps, and that, and half a dozen other things, really insulting the crowd in the town, saying that they're poor and undermining how they are. And I said, this is the city of champions. This is more like the city of fat, pathetic losers who do nothing with their lives. And I just cut down the city and cut down the people in it. So before the end of that, the segment, the crowd was literally trying to jump the guardrails and threaten to beat me in the parking lot and everything else. And as odd as that sounds, as a wrestler and as a heel, that's kind of the response you're supposed to get. You're supposed to get the crowd to be annoyed and want to, evoke their frustrations on you. In the early days of wrestling and in the, old territory days, we'd have stories about, the crowds rioting over how much they believed into the characters. And they would literally... being a heel was a dangerous thing because fans didn't care. The fans fans didn't see the difference between good or bad, and fans didn't. They did see the difference, but the fans didn't see any harm in, sticking up for their heroes when the evil heels or the bad guys would do something wrong. Or get one over on their faces, their heroes. There's stories, historically speaking, famous heel wrestlers or bad guys like Gorgeous George, for example. He was one of the first really early heel wrestlers, bad guys. He was over the top, and outside the ring, he was always dressed head to toe in the best suits, golden blonde hair, kind of like what Nature Boy Ric Flair would be in the early '80s or late '70s, early '80s. That's kind of what this character was, Gorgeous George. He was very much in love with himself. He came out with a brush and he combed his hair and a little bit flamboyant over the top. And the crowd just hated him so much because he was a bad guy wrestler that it was very common for him to get to the ring and be completely covered in blood before even getting to the ring. Why? Well, because what would happen is, this is going back to the times when you could go to arenas and there was no guardrails or safety measures. So a lot of the times what would happen is these wrestlers would come from the locker room and they'd have to come through the crowd, and the crowd would, quote, pat them on the back. But what they're really doing is they have like razor blades and other things that they're stabbing the heels with on the way to the ring because these mean guys. And that's kind of what it was back then. Nowadays, you don't have to worry about that per se. But in a way, you kind of want that expression. You want that heat. You want to make that connection with your audience, and I think that's something that modern-day wrestlers are lacking. The ability to understand what your purpose is as a heel and just leave it out there and don't, listen, no one likes to be the bad guy, and no one always likes to, be so mean, I'm sure. But in the same sense, you got to know at the end of the day, your job is to, make the baby faces look good, and also to, entertain the audience in some ways. And believe it or not, audiences like to boo someone. The audience wants to have someone to direct their frustrations to. And, if anything, that's what your role is as a heel, is to be their kind of verbal punching bag as they're yelling out all kinds of, I'll tell you, I've heard some pretty good insults from the crowd, which is something I'm used to. Which is why when it comes to trolls and things like that on social media, I kind of see it no different than that, as someone heckling the audience. And, Wrestler 101 is someone heckles you and they want to give you a hard time, you call them out on it, give them the spotlight and make them regret it, verbally on the microphone. Because that's the ultimate way, and that's, some people can do that and some people can't. And another question people had for me is, did I give up? Why couldn't I do pro wrestling and the MMA that I was doing? Why did I leave one for the other? And the ultimate real answer is, because, all honesty, I couldn't commit to one more than the other, but also because my body just wouldn't let me. I had to focus on one or the other. And both are two different genres of things and take a different amount of training. See, in wrestling, I still used a lot of my martial arts in my matches and so forth. A lot of my submissions that I used in wrestling, the Black Rose, for example, is a derivative from various submission holds I've learned in both judo and Chun Kudo, which I'm trained in. And of course, with karate, that's where a lot of my kicks, like the shadow kick, would come from and things of that nature. But also Muay Thai helped out with that as well. So anyone who's ever seen Jazz Vengeance wrestle, they've seen a lot of my martial art, abilities in those matches. And what might shock you is, even to this day, I still can roll with the best of them, even at my age and at my size. I still can train. I still do train. And of course, when I got injured in 2003 and I wasn't allowed to go to a gym, which was pretty much where I was from age 13 all the way to 2003. So think about that. From 1993 to 2003, I was always in a gym of some kind working out. So I was constantly being in shape. Between soccer, wrestling, swimming, all of those things are very much up to conditioning, and you need to be in great condition to do each of those. And a lot of people who like to hate on each of those sports, I often challenge them to attempt to do any of those before they say how easy it is or how girly it is. And because, all honesty, on this show we've talked before about how, I respect everyone who's an athlete no matter what sport you're playing, but don't sit there and tell me that your sport's better than mine or that you're more of an athlete because you play American football versus soccer, which is the world's football, because it's not as easy as it looks. And it takes a lot more skills. And in all honesty, I've broken it down before. I respect everyone for liking whatever sports they like, but don't disrespect the sports that I've played or think that they're easy because they don't require pads or don't require immediate hits. I've seen my share of fair injuries on the soccer field, and it's not pretty. And there are no pads in soccer other than some shin pads if you're lucky. In football, you're kind of stocked head to toe in pads. So, I often refer to American football as watered-down rugby because that's kind of what it more is. There's really no kicking involved other than the one kicker, and then you have to run the thing in, the football, as they call it, that they carry to the end zone. So that's kind of where they're different. But in rugby, it's kind of similar to that. You have to, kick and carry the football. So I look at soccer at American football as, a variation of rugby, but less intense because rugby also doesn't have pads, but they still believe in hitting and they're strong with their hits. So, moral of the story, folks, is no matter where you come from, what your sports are, and what you do to kind of occupy your time, it's a good idea to respect everyone's individual likes and dislikes. Not everyone's going to like the same sports. Just like I know that wrestling's not for everybody, but it doesn't mean that I can't respect someone who has other alterations and other things they want to do. Truth be told, I have many ambitions and I do many things. I'm not just made for pro wrestling. I've done pro wrestling. I've also been in the film business. I've also been in the human services business. All three are very different things. And of course, at the end of the day, I'm a husband and a father at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, what you want to do, the most important, is that role. Being the best father and husband you can be. And doing the best you can in the roles that you have. Because at the end of the day, that's truly what life is about. And that's ultimately what the greatest joy you can have is. Knowing that you helped raise, youth of America, youth of the world, and help mold them to the right direction. Encourage them to go after their goals and dreams and not discourage them. That's kind of what you want to do and make sure they get there healthy and safe. At the end of the day, that's my main goal, and that's why I try to do what I can to both inspire others and also inspire everyone else. So everyone, this is a short show, as I mentioned, and I want to say to you guys all, happy Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. I'll be back with an all-new show. May all your dreams come true from the F4L Headquarters Podcast. I am the icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, and I worked my tail off to get that title that the people gave me. So, may all your dreams come true, and I'll be back with you guys soon. Peace, everybody.